Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
They're scared.
The hunt for two BC fugitives is taking a toll, with police now unable to substantiate an alleged sighting. Also, remembering one of the victims of a deadly BC plane crash, a pilot with more than 15 years experience, and
part of the roof has collapsed in the back half of the bistro.
Businesses scramble after fire rips through part of Port Moody's historic commercial center.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening. This is day 7 of one of the country's largest manhunts. Tonight, investigators say they can't substantiate a tip that the BC murder suspects were spotted in an isolated northern Manitoba community. The Port Alberni teens are wanted in connection with 3 northern BC deaths. Our Megan Batchelor joins us live now with more. Megan, you've been following this all day. The search zone has moved in the last 24 hours. Where are we at now?
Well, Anita, it's really been quite the 24 hours. Yesterday afternoon, there was this tip that the pair had been sighted around 2 hours or more drive away from the community where the RCMP had been investigating. Since then, though, the RCMP say that they have been combing that area. They have no evidence to suggest that the pair was in York Landing, Manitoba. And so now we're hearing on the ground that police are pulling many of the resources that they had deployed to that area. The chief for that community says that 10 officers will remain overnight, but then they will be leaving tomorrow morning. But there was quite the response to this tip. It really looked like this was something to be taken very seriously. RCMP sent helicopters, a ton of officers as well. But like I said, they are now being pulled from that community. Here's what the RCMP had to say this morning about this latest tip.
Our officers are on the ground, have not made contact with the individuals, and so we are not yet in a position to confirm that these are the wanted suspects.
Okay, so Megan, police may now be leaving York Landing, but they've still made quite the mark on the community there and in other communities surrounding it. So what are residents in northern Manitoba feeling? Because most of those towns are typically very quiet.
Yeah, that's right. These are very remote, quiet northern communities, and this really seems to be the impact that we're seeing right across Western Canada as these two make their way across the country. They are stopping in these small northern communities and really putting a lot of fear into them. So Cam McLeod, Briar Schmigelski, their last known spot was Gillam, Manitoba. Then there was this tip in York Landing that sparked this massive response yesterday. And these are communities that are otherwise very quiet, don't get any sort of attention, never mind on the national level that we're seeing with this manhunt. And considering what they're accused of, it's fair that these people are feeling quite nervous, quite afraid, and that anxiety doesn't leave these residents, even though this risk does appear to have subsided.
Some of them are scared, some of them are curious.
And how are you feeling today?
Good.
Because?
They are here to keep us safe.
My foster son and my grandchild here.
I feel sorry about them. They look outside. They're scared.
And so now what the next steps are, that's anyone's guess. RCMP say they have received well over 200 tips over the last 5 days. So it does appear they're now going back to Gillam, regrouping and seeing where this investigation will take them next, Anita.
Megan Batchelor live for us tonight. Thanks, Megan. We now know the name of the pilot in a deadly float plane crash on BC's Central Coast. Al McBain had more than 15 years of flying experience. He is one of 4 people who died on Friday. CBC Vancouver News at 11 host Dan Burrett joins us live now with more. Dan, what is McBain's sister saying about him tonight?
Anita, Natalie Chambers says her brother Al was born to fly. Chambers says she has barely slept since her 59-year-old brother and 3 others were killed on Friday. She says aviation runs in their family. Their father spent 30 years in the Air Force. Natalie says Al ran marathons. He biked to work. He loved his golden retriever, and he was a beloved uncle. He flew her son over his birthday one year as a surprise. She also says Al was strict about safety, a fastidious pilot who promised her something like this would never happen. But it did. We now know where that Sea airplane was headed. It took off from Richmond, bound for Ole's Fishing Lodge in Calvert Island on the BC Central Coast. It never made it. Instead, it crashed on nearby Addenbroke Island, just to the south. Three survivors remain in five remain in hospital, and the Transportation Safety Board is at that crash scene. Now, Ole's Fishing Lodge is a family-run business on BC's Inside Passage. It's been running there since 1982, billing itself as a destination for memorable fishing trips. The weather at the time of the crash on Friday was rainy with low visibility. Natalie Chambers wants to know who said it was okay for Al to fly that day.
And he had complained before about like the low visibility and the takeoffs, and he promised me that he would not fly in those conditions.
Dan, what does Sea Air and the lodge have to say?
Well, Sea Air says Al McBain was a pilot for them for 15 years, and the company is trying to help his family during this difficult time. In a statement, Ole's Fishing Lodge tells CBC News, quote, "Our thoughts and prayers are with our guests and their families. We have no details to provide at this time to allow our guests and their families time to process this tragedy." Natalie Chambers says she must now tell her mother, who lives in a nursing home, that she's lost one of her 3 children. Anita.
Dan Burrett live for us tonight. Thank you. A man has pleaded guilty to 4 counts related to human smuggling right here in BC. Michael Kong, accused of helping 34 Chinese migrants, including children, jump the border illegally near the Peace Arch border crossing. He was originally charged with 7 offenses under the Immigration and Refugee Protection Act. They are alleged to have taken place between June 2014 and October of 2015. Kong still has to face trial on 1 of the remaining counts in the coming months. Well, a first look at the damage today from a fire that has torn through some historic Port Moody buildings. As Tina Lovegreen reports, 4 people forced from their homes, and it's not clear when the businesses will be able to rebuild.
So this is where everybody was sitting. We had about 25 people here.
Helen Daniels was surrounded by friends, celebrating her birthday yesterday in the backyard of her restaurant. Today, she's surrounded by damage from a fire.
The tenant from next door called down fire, and somebody has told me directly that he said he was barbecuing. We watched this little wisp of smoke, and we thought we'd just be coming back to the party shortly, but it just grew and grew.
In a matter of minutes, the fire spread from the Heritage Building, and plumes of black smoke covered the entire block. As the Silk Gallery, a few stores over, scrambled to save precious art.
It was quite a frenzy, and started to load stuff in our cars, and we had about 12 amazing people, residents, people in the community that just came out of nowhere. They helped us load up our cars. It was just heartbreaking to watch, but heartwarming to feel so supported.
25 significant pieces of art by award-winning artists Gary Thompson and Sandy Terry were removed, but in what state after the heavy smoke is still not known.
I'm really hoping for a miracle.
The fire has forced 4 tenants out of their homes and shut down businesses on Clark Street. Crews continue to assess the damage today and try to piece together what started the blaze that took firefighters 9 hours to put out. There were no sprinklers in the aged building.
It's older, there's void spaces, it's so dry from so many years, so it's a challenge to put it out.
As for Helen Daniels, her restaurant was closed at the time of the fire, and given the extent of the damage, it likely will be for some time to come.
Part of the roof is collapsed in the back half of the bistro, and there's water and smoke damage throughout.
The community has already began rallying behind the cherished shops.
Overwhelmed. I mean, a lot of people came down last night. Some people have been by today just to give us hugs.
And it's that kind of support that will help rebuild the charm this heritage district is known for. Tina Lovegreen, CBC News, Port Moody.
Well, speeders beware. Today, the province officially activating 5 speed enforcement cameras in Metro Vancouver. And as Deborah Goebel reports, this is just the beginning of what's to come.
With more than 60% of vehicle crashes happening in intersections, the BC government is introducing its latest salvo in the battle against speeders.
This is an intersection camera. There's a warning sign that tells you there is a camera.
Be warned, there are 5 intersections that become active today: Kingsway in Victoria and Granville and West King Edward in Vancouver, King George and 152nd in Surrey, Low-heated Old Dewdney Trunk Road in Pitt Meadows and Boundary and Kingsway in Burnaby. Eventually, 35 automated speed enforcement cameras will be installed because speeding is one of the major contributors when it comes to fatalities.
There's speed limits for a reason.
I think it's a good idea, and I think especially if people know that they're there.
Triggered by sensors in the pavement, the camera will take 3 pictures. A few days later, expect a ticket in the mail.
No jurisdiction will say what the speed is, but let me put it in real simple terms. If you drive like a normal person, you're not going to get a ticket.
Hopefully it'll make things a little bit safer, but hopefully not go too far.
BC does have a bumpy history enforcing the law when it comes to speeders. Back in the 90s, drivers did accuse the government of going too far. It was called the Photo Radar Program, speed radar devices placed in unmarked vehicles, staffed by police with tickets, sent in the mail for even minor speeding infractions. After a huge outcry, that was scrapped back in 2001.
We're using the latest technology.
Next came red light cameras, and it was data they recorded that led to the new speed-activated version. Data crunchers noticed every year more than 1.5 million speeders were barreling through those intersections, going at least 30 kilometers above the speed limit. Still, not everyone is in favor.
I don't think they're fair.
Because?
It's infringing on our rights.
While the opposition has basically called it a cash grab.
They're maybe repurposing it to gain some extra revenue from speeders.
A speeding ticket will run you anywhere from $138 to almost $500, depending on how fast you're going. And depending on the success of the program, Farnworth says it may even be expanded. Deborah Goebel, CBC News, Burnaby.
A warning tonight for pet owners to stay vigilant after a puppy nearly died from a drug overdose. This husky puppy named Bear was dropped off at the SPCA last week. He was quiet and seemed out of sorts before passing out. So the SPCA took him to the vet. Toxicity tests showed high levels of THC in his system.
Don't be embarrassed. No one's going to judge you. If you think that your animal's ingested anything at all, whether it's a cat, a dog, or a bird even, I've seen a bird OD, tell us. We're not going to judge you. We're here for the animal, and we want to make sure it's safe, because we could have actually probably helped this puppy a lot quicker, and it wouldn't have had to stay in emergency care. It probably within a couple hours would have been system clean and ready to come back.
Bear took several days to recover and has now been adopted. Well, Vancouver celebrates love in all its forms this week. Pride events officially kicking off today with the flag raising at City Hall. Festivities range from a queer cabaret and a gay history tour of Vancouver to a drag carnival and, of course, Sunday's big Pride parade.
The fact that we've stayed quiet or felt that we needed to stay quiet for so many years out of fear, it's over. Those years are over. We don't have to sit in fear. We get to be visible.
City Council will continue to support LGBTQ2+ rights and equalities so that all citizens are able to celebrate who they are and who they choose to love with pride.
To mark Vancouver Pride, we are bringing you stories of pride and progress this week. It all starts later this hour with a piece on a different kind of drag show, so make sure you stay with us. Well, if you've made the rush hour sprint to catch a sea bus only to miss the ferry between Waterfront and Lonsdale Quay, your 15-minute wait is going to get a little shorter. TransLink announcing rush hour crossings every 10 minutes starting September 3rd. The sea bus has seen increased ridership over the years, transporting on average about 20,000 passengers each weekday. And while the sailings will increase, TransLink's newest vessel, the Burrard Chinook, is not quite ready to enter service. The Chinook will be undergoing sea trials in the meantime. The spare vessel, the Burrard Beaver, will be rotated into service. And soon passengers will also be boarding BC's first fully electric bus fleet. BC Transit, the province's public transit provider outside of Metro Vancouver, has launched its low-carbon fleet program. It plans to convert all of its buses to an all-electric system by 2040. More than 1,000 existing buses will be replaced, 350 new buses added to reach its target. This is part of efforts to cut greenhouse gases in the province by 60% in the next 2 decades. The transportation sector is BC's largest source of carbon pollution. And environmental researchers are sounding the alarm about the future of Pacific Northwest forests, warning trees in wildfire-affected areas are struggling to grow back. One fire ecologist points to studies as recent as this year, which finds stunted regrowth in trees like firs hit by repeated wildfires just south of the BC border. They blame the trees' struggle and the fires themselves on drier conditions created by climate change.
It's pretty shocking to see that our forests are already feeling those effects. Those sites may not be able to support those same tree species anymore.
Forestry experts in BC expect the trend is already heading home here. They worry it could get so bad, areas now covered by forest could eventually become grasslands. It is that time of the show again to take a first look at the weather. Colette Kennedy is here tonight.
Thanks, Anita. Well, you know, we're in a situation where we're kind of the books between two bookends. Or okay, a rose between two thorns, if you prefer. What I mean by it is in terms of the features, the weather features that we're seeing, we kind of have one that's leaving us, that ridge of high pressure, which protects everything, and another one that's kind of working its way in. That's for the south coast, and another system to the north as well, in fact. So kind of coming towards the coast and leaving us. And in between, we're actually going to see some pretty pleasant conditions for the south coast and southern interior. Things start to change, though, in other parts of the province. So if you're traveling or watching us from other areas, yeah, we do get into some of that rain coming towards the north coast, northern portions of Vancouver Island as we're working our way through the next 24 to 36 hours, but generally staying drier, getting into at times a mix of sun and cloud, but still plenty of sunshine and certainly looking good towards the southern interior, as I mentioned. So even over the next 24 hours, trying to see a few showers just to the north of the city, but that's pretty far to the north of the city, and we're going to stay on the dry side of things. So overnight tonight, 15, then tomorrow morning, 16 degrees, a mix of sun and cloud, more sunshine by the afternoon, 23 with those light winds out of the southeast. As for the rest of this week and approaching the long weekend, we'll talk about that coming up.
We'll see you a little bit later in the show. Thanks, Colette. And you can watch this newscast streaming live and on demand by downloading the free CBC Gem mobile app. You can also follow CBC Vancouver on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. Now, for any breaking news updates, follow CBC News BC on Twitter. A brutal quadruple murder in a Toronto suburb. The accused killer said to have sent messages to friends graphically describing the murders. The latest from Markham next. Okay, so local beaches are always full when we have great weather, but a member of Delta Council is concerned about what's happening at Centennial Beach this summer. It's been drawing big crowds, and he says it's creating traffic chaos for locals. Deborah Goebel has more.
For years, Centennial Beach in Delta's Boundary Bay Regional Park was one of those quiet waterfront gems, frequented largely by locals living in the area. But then, a couple of years ago, it became part of the Metro Vancouver park system. A big concession stand went in. More and more people began hearing about it.
It was full to the brim to the point where the Delta police had to be called to actually start turning cars away.
It's one of those things that comes with the beauty of our community. People want to come and see it. So, you know, it's hard to complain, but on the other hand, too, it's kind of easy to because it's hard for us to get here sometimes.
From all over the Lower Mainland, sun seekers have been flocking to Centennial Beach this summer.
Because we heard it's a warm beach, so we wanted to come. There was a playground for the kids, so we thought it would be nice.
They've come from Surrey to have a picnic here.
We decided to come here since it's close, so yeah, it's the first time we come here.
And unlike many other beaches around the Lower Mainland, there's no E. coli warning here. But there is a different problem.
You just see the cars all along that road, you know, outside of the park, and I thought, oh no!
Oh no, because on more than one weekend this summer, it's been a real mess here. When all 650 parking spots fill up, there's nowhere for the cars to go.
Boundary Bay Road down there, the entrance, a couple of weeks ago, they closed it because just to residents because there were just too many people in the park.
This is the problem. Boundary Bay Road is the only way in and out of this community.
It's been a big concern. It's been a victim of its own success. We're really proud of Centennial Beach. It's a jewel here in Delta, but the overcrowding, it's turned into a real problem for our local residents.
Electric signs can help, warning of congestion ahead, but when the cars back up, there's nothing really the residents can do but wait.
I've been stuck on the Bay Road for almost a half an hour before the police got involved, because a parks person would stand on the road and say the park's full, and it would just back up and back up and back up, and slowly but surely you've got to cross the double line to try to get home. It sucks. It's terrible.
In a few years, a new road is supposed to be built, giving homeowners an alternative route in. But for now, there's not much to do except wait for the weather to turn. That's when the beach will become their own again. Deborah Goebel, CBC News, Delta.
Stay with us. We will have the first part in CBC's Pride and Progress series in just a few minutes. A 23-year-old man has been charged in a quadruple homicide just north of Toronto. Mehnaz Zaman is now facing 4 counts of first-degree murder. And as the CBC's Angelina King reports, Zaman is suspected of posting photos of the scene online.
Late Saturday night, chilling messages from a man named Mehnaz to members of an online gaming community. He said he had been lying to his family for years. In messages obtained by CBC News, the man says he had dropped out of university. He told his parents he was at class, but instead was hanging out at the mall and the gym. He wrote, "I did this because I don't want my parents to feel the shame of having a son like me." He said he told his family his graduation was on Sunday and killed them the night before. "I couldn't have delayed it any longer," he wrote. "I wanted them to die so that they didn't suffer knowing how much of a pathetic subhuman I was. It's all very selfish." CBC News has not independently verified that the person sending these messages is 23-year-old Mehnaz Zaman, now charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder. But a woman who rented a basement apartment in the home for 5 years says this photo from his gaming profile is a match. Amira Riaz says Zaman was quiet and always helpful around the house.
I never heard him once even single shouting, and so always smiling, always helpful. Her mother is bringing grocery, he is taking out the grocery from car.
She says Zaman lived with his parents, sister, and grandmother. Police were called to their home in Markham yesterday afternoon. They had been told several people were possibly hurt inside. When they got there, Zaman was at the front door. They arrested him. Inside of the house, police found 4 bodies, 3 women and 1 man.
This scene is going to be held for quite some time, as there's a lot of work for our forensic identification to be doing inside the residence here.
Zaman briefly appeared in court today wearing glasses, a black t-shirt, and he gave his name in a soft voice. He's scheduled back in court on Friday. Neighbors say that they're shocked police are in their otherwise peaceful community, especially for something like a quadruple murder. Officers say they understand the concern, but want the community to know they aren't looking for any other suspects, and there is no risk to public safety. Angelina King, CBC News, Markham, Ontario.
If you can't love yourself, how in the hell are you going to love somebody else? Can I get an amen up in here? Now let the music play!
Well, he's no stranger to mainstream popularity, but it seems RuPaul is reaching a new plateau these days. 10 years in, RuPaul's Drag Race has captured 3 Primetime Emmys and secured another nomination for this year's awards. The reality competition sees drag queens duking it out on the runway for a grand prize and the title of Drag Superstar. But while the show has helped elevate drag's exposure, performers right here in BC say the show offers a somewhat limited view of what the art form has to offer. As part of this week's Pride and Progress coverage, we're speaking with popular non-binary performer Continental Breakfast about what makes their drag different.
It's full fantasy. I literally, I feel great when I look like this. It's not a costume. It's an avenue of expression that I'm using to forcefully take masculine and feminine traits and just meshing them together and turning them into this new entity, something that no one's seen, which is usually my goal. I want to create something that forces people to think.
My stereotype and bias of what a drag show was some, large person in a red dress on stage doing Barbra Streisand covers. And what I saw was actually anything but. It was youthful, it was energetic. I think it borders on high art.
It's a complete different drag than any other drag I've seen. They always keep you at the edge of the seat. They do acrobatics. It's always a pleasure.
It's great that we have the whole RuPaul phenomenon, but we need something to counter it. We need to see that that's not what everybody wants to look like. And that's not the only way to do it and do it as a living.
Pride shows, I find, typically the audience is less people that we recognize, because our regular programming is this beautiful group of 100 and however many people that come every second week.
We're so fortunate to have such a giving and forgiving audience. When we make mistakes, they cheer. When we have successes, they cheer. It's just a hodgepodge of weirdos all in one space.
Every 500 people that really like what we do here, there's always going to be 5 that don't. And it's going to be like that forever. I love it when people don't understand what I'm doing. I love when it make people have to question it. I love when they adore it. I love everything in between because the effect was there. I've always thought of it as someone who sees me looking like I do, and the next day they see some young queer person with pink hair or mint hair, and maybe they won't feel so shocked by it or taken aback by it because they've seen how far people can go with their expression and how they can dress, and realizing that oh, you think that's crazy, you should have seen the person I saw last night.
The search for 2 BC men suspected in 3 northern BC homicides focused on a remote community in Manitoba today. Authorities scrambling to get to York Landing. Why they're leaving next.
They're the most studied and famous whale family in the world. What's pushing J-Pod to the brink? I'm Gloria Makarenko, host of the new CBC British Columbia original podcast, Killers. Is it too late to save them?
Here are some of the stories we're following tonight on CBC Vancouver News. The pilot of a fatal float plane crash in BC was safety-oriented, according to his family. Alan McBain, a pilot with 15 years of experience, is now being remembered as born to fly. He was one of 4 people who died on Friday in the crash on BC's Central Coast.
It was huge plumes of smoke.
Businesses are scrambling after fire rips through part of Port Moody's core. 2 buildings are completely destroyed and another 2 hit hard by smoke and water damage. It's not clear when residents will be able to return and how businesses will rebuild. The search for the suspects wanted in 3 BC murders moved from Gillam, Manitoba last night to the remote community of York Landing. But so far, police have come up empty-handed. Angela Johnston has more from the area where the situation may be changing yet again.
It's a serious endeavor, tracking down 2 fugitive suspects. The RCMP is scaling down now, but not before pulling out all of the stops from above and on the ground. Officers carefully comb through this remote community of about 500 people in northern Manitoba, a place so remote most people usually get here by ferry or air. Over the past 24 hours, York Landing found itself thrust into an international spotlight, becoming the center of a massive hunt for suspects Cam McLeod and Briar Schmigelski. Yesterday, the Indigenous-led Bear Clan patrol spotted 2 people matching the suspect's description near the local dump and lagoon. Since then, the police presence swelled and was a bit overwhelming for Travis Biggity.
A little bit, yeah. You know, none of the Bear Clan members have slept too often. Like, we sleep like 3-4 hours and we're up and we want to go patrol.
We'll be glad when this is over.
And he's not the only one. 12-year-old Savannah Colombe says she thinks she saw one of the suspects near her family's home. She says the man was Caucasian, wearing a camouflage jacket like Schmigelski's.
I thought he was going to come into the house.
And how are you feeling today?
Good.
Because
they are here to keep us safe.
All the police? It makes you feel better seeing them around?
Yeah.
Still, RCMP stressed today that they have not been able to substantiate the tip about the suspects in the community. And York Landing's chief says officers are starting to pull out, moving back to Gillam to reorganize.
Our number 1 priority, again, is to find these individuals so that we can at least go from there.
We're still going to remain on guard and obviously working with the RCMP, obey all the commands that they have in order.
Still, the full weight of the flurry of activity has taken a toll on people who live here.
For myself, I'm not scared, but it's the only thing I'm worrying about my foster son and my grandchild here.
It's a search that has created fear and anxiety for many in this part of the province. And with the hunt for the suspects entering its 2nd week, there's still very few answers. Angela Johnston, CBC News, York Landing.
That police operation in York Landing was a response to a tip from the Bear Clan. It's an Indigenous-led group serving as a combination of neighborhood watch and community outreach program. Now, some of their volunteers were in York Landing to patrol the neighborhood and reassure people there. The CBC's Katie Nicholson walks us through what the Bear Clan is all about.
Whether they're picking up dirty needles in unrelenting heat or looking for missing persons in unforgiving cold, the members of Bear Clan suit up every night to walk Winnipeg's streets on a mission to make them more safe for the vulnerable.
The community has an ally now where they felt kind of isolated before. People are coming out of their houses, they're meeting with us, they're talking with us, they're sharing with us.
That girl's only 13.
We patrolled with the Bear Clan's boss, James Favel, last summer.
Missing girl, right?
The former trucker awakened the Bear Clan from its decades-long hibernation after the 2014 death of Tina Fontaine, the exploited 15-year-old whose body was pulled from the Red River.
People aren't always comfortable speaking with the Winnipeg police. They come and they speak with us. Of course.
Its volunteer patrols gather information from people too afraid to speak with police. They also offer comfort, safety, food, and hope to those who live in some of the city's poorest neighborhoods.
In Anishinaabe tradition, the Bear Clan are the protectors of our community.
Professor Nigan Sinclair says the Bear Clan arose because of a dire need.
The long-standing relationship that's been fractured between Indigenous peoples and different institutions, particularly the police, the Bear Clan has filled in that space.
Now, Bear Clan builds that much-needed trust. One of the reasons its volunteers have been sent to calm frayed nerves in York Landing and Fox Lake, rattled by the intense manhunt.
It's bridged that gap that was missing before.
Not so long ago, many of the people who walk with Bear Clan might have avoided Sergeant Brian Krupelo. Now he sits on its board.
Having them see me sit at the board chair and to be part of the Bear Clan den, to show up in uniform and not in uniform, to be available to speak to them, they open up to me a lot more.
Bear Clan has been so successful, in 4 short years it has expanded with chapters in 5 other provinces.
From inside out, we're healing, we're growing, we're empowering, we're educating.
A testament to what can be done when people come together. Katie Nicholson, CBC News, Toronto.
Another beautiful evening out there. At 6:36, you are looking at a live shot of the North Shore. A sunny week ahead. So how hot will it get? Well, Colette Kennedy has your full weather after the break.
CBC Musical Nooners are back and better than ever, celebrating a special 10-year anniversary of free live outdoor concerts every weekday at noon on the CBC Vancouver outdoor stage at 700 Hamilton Street. There is something for everyone, so for details and the full schedule, check out cbc.ca/musicalnooners. Summertime in Vancouver is hard to beat, and like these shows, will be over before you know it. Don't miss out.
It is time now for a look at the full forecast. Colleen Kennedy is back.
Thanks, Anita. Well, some fair weather for much of the area. It's funny, though, it's only Monday, and already we're looking towards next weekend because the holiday weekend, it's just human nature, right? Or at least when it's summertime. Average height this time of year, just a little reminder to put you in perspective, 22.3. We've been very close to that. And the record high from 2009, 34. 4 degrees. That's a significant record there. Same with the record low, holding since 1947, so that's been in place a long time at 9.4. All right, I'm going to show you 2 different perspectives. We'll start kind of with a smaller geographic area, and then we'll expand to show the province in case you're watching from other areas or you're doing some traveling, it being the summertime and there's so much travel going on. But really what I want you to note is even though a ridge of high pressure is moving away from us, and that tends to be that sinking, more stable air, even though it's pushing into the prairies and the next system is trying to come in, it's fairly weak, this upper low, and also the system trying to push towards the north coast. It doesn't mean it won't have an impact, but it tends to have less of an impact for the south coast or into the southern interior. So you're seeing it for northern Vancouver Island, for the central coast and the north coast. But just looking ahead into Wednesday, now later Wednesday, a greater chance we'll see a few things starting to pop up in terms of some afternoon showers or thunderstorms. Here's your broader perspective then. Just having a look, because really where you're going to see the impact, not just the areas that I mentioned for northern Vancouver and for the coastline, but towards the northern central interior. We also get into a situation where we're seeing some showers and out ahead of a little trough that's passing through, a few thunderstorms starting to fire up as well. So not only is there that risk into Tuesday, but seeing it just pushing further north towards the northern interior, and that's as we're getting into Wednesday. But watch as I roll this forward and the models go into Wednesday afternoon. That's when things start to kind of expand everywhere with some daytime heating and getting into that situation where we could be seeing some showers and thunderstorms kind of showing up almost everywhere there. Not everywhere, but in terms of scattered precipitation, so many places with that risk. Here you go for tomorrow afternoon. A look at some of your temperatures, a little cooler with the rain showers. Port Hardy at 17, Prince Rupert at 16, doing a little better. Prince George, though, 18, still a 60% chance of seeing some showers there. And then Squamish, 40% chance of some showers. Looks like a little extra cloud cover, about 23 for the high, but looking good into Victoria, 23 in Abbotsford, 25, Hope at 25 as well. For Vancouver, this is what we have for you. And again, we're getting towards, in fact, let's expand this and show you what happens as we get towards the long weekend. Things are looking pretty good. There's that chance into Wednesday, could have the odd shower pop up. I barely put that in, as you can see, just a mix of sun and cloud. Friday, a better chance of seeing some showers. The temperatures are nearly steady through the period. And then as we look ahead towards the long weekend, okay, other than Friday, Anita, things are looking pretty good.
That is not bad. Thank you, Colette. Around 1,400 protesters were arrested this weekend in Moscow in a crackdown on the opposition. Now the main opposition leader has wound up sick while in prison. Questions about a severe allergic reaction next.
In December, an arrest was made that put Canada into the middle of a trade war between the United States and China.
Ms. Munn, what do you have to say to the charges?
I'm Stephen Quinn, the host of a new CBC Vancouver original podcast. This is Sanctioned, the arrest of a telecom giant. It's the complicated story of how and why Huawei CFO Meng Wanzhou was arrested. Download Sanctioned today at cbc.ca/sanctioned or wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Amy Bell. Here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox.
Join your favorite CBC Vancouver personalities at the world-famous Vancouver Pride Parade on August 4th. Enjoy amazing music, rainbow colors, festive atmosphere, and crazy costumes at this one-of-a-kind parade. And your favorite summer tradition is back. Musical Nooners is back for its 10th year, so grab a lunch and a friend and enjoy free concerts weekdays at noon all summer long. For more on these events, check us out online.
Three people, including 2 children, are dead, and a manhunt is underway after a shooting spree in Northern California. The shots were fired at a crowded festival in the city of Gilroy last night.
I think any time a life is lost, it's a tragedy. But when it's young people, it's even worse. And it's very difficult.
Police today releasing information about one suspected shooter who was shot dead by police. They say the gun was bought legally 3 weeks ago. Police are looking for at least one other suspect. More than a dozen people were injured. Some are in serious condition. And at least 52 people have been killed in a prison riot in northeastern Brazil. Authorities say 16 of the dead were decapitated and the remainder suffocated when part of the prison was set on fire. Local media are reporting it happened during clashes between organized crime groups within the Altamira prison. The prison is designed to hold 200 inmates, but roughly 300 are housed there. 2 prison officers had been taken hostage, but have since been freed. Violence due to overcrowding in prisons in Brazil is not unusual. More than 1,000 protesters arrested in Moscow over the weekend. They were demanding opposition candidates be allowed to run in upcoming municipal elections. Now, the prominent opposition activist behind those protests claims he has been poisoned. And as Susan Ormiston reports, his sudden illness is suspiciously similar to those experienced by other Kremlin critics.
Alexei Navalny called for an opposition protest over the weekend, and he paid for it. The demonstration in central Moscow was large, the response vicious. Over 1,000 people were detained, but Navalny was already locked up in jail. In a blog post, today he revealed his face and neck began to redden and itch on Saturday. By Sunday, his eyes were like slits, his eyelids swollen to the size of ping pong balls. His personal doctor said some kind of chemical agent caused contact dermatitis. She wasn't allowed initially to examine him. Nor was his lawyer, Olga Mikhailova, who says he was poisoned by some chemical agent, but no one knows what or where it was. In hospital, the swelling came down after Navalny was injected with multiple courses of prednisone, a steroid. Today, he was sent back to detention over objections from his physician. She wanted him observed longer. Navalny says he is not allergic to anything and has never before had a reaction. He is Vladimir Putin's most prominent foe, arrested 10 times. We met him 2 years ago when he was fighting fraud charges, trumped up, he says.
Of course, they will find me guilty. And everyone in this office, including prosecutor office, including judge, everyone understands that I'm non-guilty.
His mysterious illness raises suspicions because of other Russian attempts to neutralize opponents, like Sergei Skripal, a former Russian spy who almost died last year from a nerve agent in Salisbury, and Alexander Litvinenko, a retired Russian officer in the security service. He did die of polonium poisoning in London. 2 years ago, Navalny himself was blinded temporarily when green dye was thrown in his face. Recent protests have brought on some of the most violent reaction in years. Fears are the beatings may not be the only way to send a message to the Kremlin's opponents. Susan Ormiston, CBC News, London.
The Chinese government is speaking out for the first time about the protests in Hong Kong, which have been escalating over the past 8 weekends. As the CBC's Sasha Petrusik reports, Beijing is accusing Western countries of fanning the flames.
China's message today was tough, but it was measured, clearly calculated not to
add fuel to the fire, not to provoke the protesters any more than necessary. But obviously, Beijing is not happy with what's going on, very frustrated, especially with the latest confrontations that we've seen over the past weekend, the running battles, the loads and loads of tear gas, the protesters who seem to also be getting more frustrated and more angry and putting up roadblocks, setting fires, doing some things that are obviously a greater challenge to the police. Now, Beijing is calling all of this horrendous. They're saying that the more radical protesters are conducting evil and criminal actions, and they say that they should be held to account, especially if they're doing things that are unlawful. And as far as Beijing is concerned, even disobeying the police and holding protests when they shouldn't be, that's also unlawful. And one of the things that Beijing also had to say is that it is very critical of Western powers, who it accuses of really fueling all of these protests, of organizing them, helping fund them, especially the United States. And it is saying that this is a way for the West to get at China and to undermine it from within. One of the things that it also is clearly signaling, though, is that it is prepared to let the government in Hong Kong and the police there handle this matter, that it is not intending to send in troops. At least that seems to be the intention right now. It had a brief reference that there is a legal way that they could send in troops, that the troops which are stationed in Hong Kong at the moment could be employed to help the police, but it's saying that's not on the cards right now. At least those are the signals that it is sending. For now, it seems to be content to let the Hong Kong government and the police handle things and really take the heat. Sasha Petrusik, CBC News, Beijing.
Well, the tiny town of Goodwood, Ontario wasn't much of a destination before for most of its history, but a hit CBC show has put it on the map. The secret small town charm of Schitt's Creek next.
Tuesday on the Early Edition, the City of Surrey is announcing 2 new initiatives to improve safety on the water and prevent drowning in their municipality. We'll hear about that and more tomorrow on the Early Edition.
A small Ontario community that shot to an unlikely and initially unappreciated fame is now sad to see the end of Schitt's Creek. The popular CBC TV show is ending. As the CBC's Daniel Clark reports, the tiny hamlet where it was filmed is feeling a little blue.
Welcome to Goodwood, Ontario, population 663. It's my first time here, so I figured I'd take you on a little tour of a town that you know as Schitt's Creek. Nods from the Television Academy for Outstanding Comedy Series, Lead Actors.
I wish we had gotten to the second tape in the Workplace Etiquette series.
And at long last, the brilliance of Maura's outfits. The hit sitcom has left some of its magic in what was once a drive-through town, making it a destination in its own right.
So we have people that want to see, they want to see Schitt's Creek, so they want to go and see where the locations were. They want to go to the Schitt's Creek Town Hall.
This is the main intersection in town, and that is Bob's Garage, which is really just a workshop where they make custom wheelchairs. That is the famous Café Tropical, which is really just somebody's house. Die-hard fans make the day trip to see the sights and embrace a connection they feel with the series.
First of all, it's Canadian. The thing that I really loved about it is the acceptance of parents being open and accepting their children for who they are and who you love.
Attracting more than just tourists, Schitt's Creek locations manager Callie Taylor has returned. She's working on another production that has set up shop in Goodwood. So it's my understanding that you worked on Schitt's Creek.
Yeah, I'm in the locations department.
And right now we are standing outside of
what was Bob's Garage. This whole area is becoming really popular for filming. It's always nice when people are happy to see you, because sometimes we're filming in areas that people aren't too happy and you don't see a lot of fans coming around.
Do you recognize this? Well, this is Rose Apothecary, but really it's the town's arts and crafts store. So let's go in and have a look at what the real inside looks like. Some are breathing a sigh of relief, like Romney Wool's owner Marilyn Leonard.
It means I won't have to look for things anymore and find them 6 months after they've left.
Each year, her shop would close for the show and would transform into the famous Rose Apothecary.
Well, it's a general store, but it's also a very specific store.
Still, the label on the town is indelible.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure if you Google Schitt's Creek, it says Goodwood, and if you Google Goodwood, it says Schitt's Creek.
So this is the new Schitt's Creek?
Yep.
Daniel Clark, CBC News, Goodwood.
That is it for our program tonight. You can, of course, always find it online at cbc.ca/BC. And our next local news is right here at 11 o'clock after the National with Dan Barrett. Have a wonderful night.